Hi everyone, so welcome to our first live stream. Let me just do a quick audio check and make sure that we have audio. All right guys, so thanks for tuning in and we'll just get right to it then. What we're going to be going through is we're going to create a basic VR project from scratch using Unreal Engine. We're going to set up a pawn with motion controllers in it and just add a couple of meshes for it. We're also going to use the built-in VR template. And in comparison, we're also going to use a VR plugin. So the Runberg VR plugin, so my plugin out in the marketplace. And just going to discuss a little bit after that some of the pros and cons of the different approaches of creating one from scratch using the VR template and using a plugin. And after that, we're going to go through a Q&A. So Q&A is only available in Twitch. So if you want to ask questions, I'll try to keep monitoring the Twitch chat room for any questions that you guys might have. All right. Yeah, so I guess let's get started. So fired up version 4.17 of the engine, and with the recent versions of the engine, it got a lot easier to create a simple VR pawn compared to the earlier versions. So what we're going to go through is we're going to create a basic pawn and have install some motion controllers on it and just a few things that you need to watch out for. All right, I'm going to remove the player start first on this default level. Let's just save it as a new map. All right, and now I'm going to create a pawn, and I'm going to use the parent class, this default pawn. And let's name that to something a little bit better. If I can open it. Okay. Let me just save this project map. Let me just restart the project. I seem to be having a problem with my right click. Let's do a all right, let's try that again. Just have a VR pawn. And just gonna snap that in. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is add a camera component to it. And a couple of motion controllers. So there's a number of ways you can do this. This is one of the simpler ways. I'm just gonna duplicate that motion controller by pressing Ctrl W. Let's give it a proper name, right? Motion controller left. And I'm gonna add a static mesh, so at least we can see our motion controllers. So let me just do this. And let's use one of the engine content. To do that, you just click View Options and Show Engine Content here. And let's look at the cone. Yep, pretty big. Let's have it rotated like this. Let's scale the size to that in. Let's try 0.25. Yep, that looks okay. Let's just offset it a little bit. And then I'm gonna duplicate that. You can fiddle around with the offset depending on your mesh. Mesh right, and I'm gonna attach it to the motion controller right. All right. All right, so now we have a fairly basic pawn. What we're gonna do is, well, or what I like doing is to increase the field of view to 110. Simply because the current iterations of both the Vive and the Rift have a field of view of 110, so you kind of use the whole field of view of your headset. And another key thing is to, let's see, should have auto possess. So I'm putting it to player 0, which means the current player. And that should be pretty much it. Let me just double check if we've got everything correctly. All right, so let's save this map. Map 1. And I'm gonna remove the player start. And we're just gonna simply drag and drop the pawn here to the world. And that should be it. Let's give this baby a whirl and see how we do. Okay. All right, so we've got the motion controllers running. Although you could see that there's an issue here. So I can't see the right hand, I can only see the left hand, and we'll fix that up. And I'll show you why. So with the motion controllers, you've got a setting here for hand. So one is left and the other one is right. Yep. And that should fix that issue there. There's another issue, but I'll get to that in a sec. So you can see that here. And as you can see from where I am, right now I'm sitting. So if I kind of go up and bobble my head up on top of this floor, you can see that I'm actually not on the correct height for my setup. So I'm using the Rift at the moment. So you can see here the motion controllers are working with the mesh in there. So quite relatively simple to set up basic pawn. So let's fix the that issue with the tracking origin. So to do that, just go onto event graph. I like cleaning up all of this stuff here. And let's do set tracking origin. All right. So for both the Vive and the Rift, the origin is at the floor level. For the PSVR, it's at the eye level. All right, so. And that should be pretty much it. So you don't need to do a lot of height offsets with the recent iterations of the engine. You just need that one single node. So you can't see my boundaries at the moment, but it's completely flushed properly onto the floor. And you can see the difference. Now I can see the floor and I can see my motion controllers here. All right. So, and that's a quick setup. Another thing that you need to be aware of, another pitfall, is that this should work within the editor. Outside, once you start packaging, your game or your VR experience might not run in VR automatically. So you need to enable the HMD. So there's a node called enable HMD. So you can set this up in the pawn itself as well. Or you can set it up in your level blueprint or in your game mode blueprint, just to make sure that it actually starts to enable the HMD. So you just do this. Obviously, if you're gonna publish your game or experience, you're gonna want to do a little bit more than just enabling it. Just having a look at whether it was enabled and to kind of gracefully tell the user whether the headset is on or off, or whatever the requirements are for the store that you're publishing to. So yeah, so don't forget the enable HMD, or if you have issues after packaging your project that it doesn't start in VR, you need to ensure that the this node is set, or executed. So at a bare minimum, that should be it for Unreal Engine, making a VR pawn and making a project compatible with VR. So relatively simple and quick, and then you can start putting in logic and code, right? Such as teleportation or grabbing mechanics. So if you're setting up, you're gonna want to, if you want to do that all manually, you're gonna have to, do all of the code obviously manually from either your VR pawn or create your own custom classes, blueprint classes. All right. And that's a quick way of creating one. And just a note on the field of view and common pitfalls on field of view, or at least I prefer specifying the field of view to get a really to really use and maximize the current iteration of headsets field of view. And the auto possess is a common issue. So from the pawn, make sure you're auto possessing it for player 0. And and another thing is the enable HMD and the set tracking origin. All right, so that's it for creating a very simple or very basic project from the get-go. And if you have, let's say, a more sophisticated level than this, creating a pawn like that and just dragging it into the level should work. And then you'll be able to see your level in VR. All right, so let's have a look at the agenda again, our overview. So we've gone through the just setting up a basic pawn with motion controllers on it, and then looking at some common pitfalls. And then now we're gonna go to the using the VR template that comes with Unreal Engine. So let's just go ahead and do that now. All right, we launch 417 for this stream. All right, so then you click new project, and there's a template there called virtual reality. I'm just gonna name this, what to name it? Let's name it VR template. Just wait for that to come up. All right, so we're gonna look at I haven't looked at the VR template, to be honest, since its release. So, but for the purpose of comparing it with the one that we just created, we're gonna look at the equivalent one with this template. So should have let's open up the map called motion controller map. So this map includes a VR pawn that can do grabbing and teleportation. So the code is in here, and you could just reuse that or tweak it to tweak it to your liking. Let's just start this map and just have a quick look before we do anything else. All right, so they seem to have the same problem with the height offset with the VR template. So the teleport is here, and I'm gonna have a look at that in a few secs. Let's see what's gone on with the template. Before we do that, let's just have a look at their pawn. Actually, we'll need to look at the pawn that they're using. Okay, so we'll have the motion controller pawn. All right, so this is the pawn that's set up for the VR template, for the one with the motion controller map. And you could see that it's basically set up the same with the camera and an extra scene component here for the origin. And no motion controllers, as you could see, because the way it's done with this template is, let's see, they have a different blueprint, and they use that called the BP motion controller. So they have a different actor and then they attach that actor onto the origin here. It's basically the same as what we did, except that the motion controller is a separate actor, and then they're attaching it as a child actor component here. And I'll show you the motion controller, and this is the actor that is the motion controller, which is set up pretty much the same, except they've got a couple of things here for doing the grab and the teleport. So, and then they have got the mannequin skeletal mesh. All right, so that's how it is set up in a nutshell. And you've got all of the other code in here. I'll go through the teleportation quickly in a while. But let's have a look at why the height offset seems to be off. So they should have, if you need to search for something, this blueprint should have the set tracking origin like this, and you could find a node. So you could see that they're looking at the HMD device name, and based on the HMD device, they're looking at the Rift and the VR. So for PSVR, they're doing set tracking origin to eye level, and this looks correct to me. So set tracking origin to floor level, and since I'm using the Rift, oh, okay, yeah. So I'm using 4.17.2. There is an issue with the update, and that's also evident in C++ side, and obviously here in the blueprint side as well. And they haven't, Epic hasn't gotten around to obviously changing this template in 4.17. The device name changed in for the Oculus Rift. It became Oculus HMD, if I remember correctly. So let's see, I had that same issue before for another project in C++. So, and that's why it's never going to here, because I'm using an Oculus Rift at the moment for this stream. So let me just put that back in there. And let's try that and see if we fix the issue. Yep, so it kind of looks like it from, yep. So now correctly flashed to the floor because of that node. We didn't used to have that node before, even in earlier versions of the engine. So that's really quite a lifesaver. So let's just do some grabbing here. So you can do a grab, you can play around here, you can teleport, obviously. So we're gonna look at this teleport here. So it creates an arc, and then you do that, and then yeah. So it's all set up for you, and I'll just explain a little bit of how that works. Simply because we're gonna be looking at kind of something similar for when we look at the plugin and how to set up a VR project using a plugin. All right, so how it's set up is, as I mentioned, the way the template does it is they have a pawn similar to what we just did, except that they're attaching the motion controller as child actors onto here during runtime, as you could see here. Here. So that's where they're doing it, and they're setting it to the left and to the right. And as you noticed on the motion controller, they only have the right hand. So basically it's just a simple, we're just gonna have to multiply the Z to negative to make it the left hand. So that's how they're doing that trick. And the handle the teleportation, so they've split the teleportation code to this to the pawn is the one that actually executes the teleportation, meaning to actually move the pawn from where it is now to the target location. And they do a camera fade here and then a camera fade here. And the nice thing here is that you can see exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it using blueprints. And the controller input, so for grabbing and for teleportation, is handled here as well, as you can see. And all of those other stuff that you've seen with the arc and the targets is handled inside the actor called BP Motion Controller. And they've got a couple of functions here that shows you how they're activating the teleporter, and then how they're doing that arc trace, and and then basically spawning a mesh through that arc trace so that you get that nice arc on through there. And and then the teleport actually is kind of handled from here. So you kind of have to look at a couple of different places to see how the teleportation is done. So handle teleportation arc. So we're gonna go through a more thorough analysis of the teleporter, and we're gonna create our own teleporter on a future episode of this series. But I just kind of want to give an overview of what's in here and how it is set up for teleporter, as I get a lot of questions for both the VR template and how my plugin works in comparison. So all right, so that's how they're doing it. And the way to define the area of the teleport, and if you're using the template, is the nav mesh volume. Should have one here. So this one is a nav mesh volume. And then if you press P on your keyboard, so P for Papa, it will show you in the green area where the valid teleport areas are. So kind of like that. So P, P, P. All right. So you've got, and they're using nav modifier volumes obviously to kind of fine tune that area there that you're allowed to teleport to. All right. So that's kind of quick rundown of the VR template, how to use it. And as of this recording, fix that issue with this. So I haven't checked in for 18. Well, first time I'm seeing it here in the blueprint, but I did experience this in C++. So obviously it's also, of course it will be a similar issue here in blueprint. So Epic hasn't gotten to changing this yet, obviously in the template that comes with the engine. So just change that to Oculus HMD. Can't recall which one changed, whether it was the implementation of Epic or it was the Oculus SDK that's the culprit for the name change. But basically instead of Oculus Rift, you need to have Oculus HMD in there. All right. And you need to get to this node to get your Oculus Rift working properly with the floor offsets. All right. And let's now try to use a plugin. So we've gone through the VR template, gone around through that, did some basic troubleshooting, and kind of looked at the teleport and how they're doing the teleport, because we're going to start comparing that with the plugin in a while. All right, so we have a VR plugin. So there are a number of plugins. I was planning to go through all of them, but then I'll have to kind of look at each one and then play around with it a bit. For simplicity, I'm just using my plugin because I'm quite familiar with it, obviously, as I've made it. That plugin is available in the marketplace. So, and you basically look for VR. I think it's the only one in the marketplace to date. Yep, so it will be this one. And we're gonna, and then just install it onto your, have I installed it? Yep, so I've installed it to 417. All right, so let's use this one to create a basic VR project. So first thing is, once you've installed the plugin, just go to Settings, Plugins, enable that. So as of this recording, we're at version 3011. So I'm enabling that. You'll need to restart the project. Right, so just wait for the engine to catch up. And I'm gonna close this. Let's create a new map for this. Thinking maybe we should put it somewhere in a new folder. Right. And then I'm gonna create a new level. So let's use the default level for this. And if you want to have a look at the plugin content, if you're downloading it from the marketplace, or if you're using the Epic Marketplace version, just take the show plugin content and the show engine content. So you need to tick both of this to see the plugin contents. Okay. But if you're doing the one from GitHub, because it's an open source plugin and it's available here in my GitHub repository, so you can freely grab it with all the C++ source code there. Okay. So if you're using the GitHub version, you just need to click show plugin content and it should come up here. If you're using the marketplace, both of these should be ticked. So you could see the Gutenberg VR classes here. Okay, and I've added a couple of content there as well. So some sample content with blueprints, with a couple of maps, and I plan to add a couple more here so that you could see how to use the plugin. Because initially the version of the plugin were just the C++ classes, and then I've got a couple of tutorials on YouTube that shows you how to use them. So, but now I've added a couple of starter content in there with meshes and with a couple of starter meshes for you to use. All right, so let's create a pawn using that plugin. Let me just go back to here. So now I can create add new. I'll create a blueprint class. So similar to the one we did with the basic pawn, we just, instead of clicking pawn here, we're just going to use, look at the Gutenberg VR pawn here and select, and then we call it VR pawn plugin. All right. And similarly, we'll remove player start. The pawn was created to use the player start and a game mode, but for simplicity and for this stream, I'm going to show you exactly how to use it the same way as the Epic template uses it, and the same way that I showed you how to create one from scratch. So I'll remove that player start. So basically what it gives you, one of the things that the plugin gives you is that it gives you a pre-configured pawn with motion controllers in it, all set up, and also a capsule collision in case you need it for your game or VR experience. And all you need to do then is to add either a static mesh or a skeletal mesh. So I'm gonna add static mesh left, then I'm gonna add a static mesh right. All of the other settings should be already correct, so you don't need to do a lot of extra code. So the method for the plugin is somewhere in between creating it manually and using the VR template. So with the plugin, you kind of have a little bit more control, a little bit more granular control on things, but it also hides quite a few implementations from you as well onto the C++ side. And the advantage of that is it kind of makes it more clean when you're doing your logic for your game or experience. All right, so I've added a mesh called sm_hand there that comes with the plugin. let's go to the viewport here. So now I don't have to set the left and right hand because they're all pre-configured. The camera, the field of view, and everything is all set in there, and you can still change it if you want to. All right. So then we have, so with this left hand, because the mesh is also only for the right hand, with the mesh that I'm giving out with the plugin, you need to set the Y to -1 and the rotation, and then it's good to do a rotation here to -90. Yep. And then here we'll do a 90 degrees rotation. And we'll set and that should be it for the right hand. We'll just save it as a new map, that's fine. And we'll just drag and drop it like that. So it's pretty much the old school way of doing the VR pawn. So you can see that the camera is coming from there, coming from the actual floor level. But you don't need to worry too much about that. The handling of all the height offsets and stuff is done by the plugin itself. So it's pretty much plug and play, and just add a static mesh or a skeletal mesh for your stuff. If I can have the pawn working. All right, so we'll need to auto possess the pawn as well to make sure we're using it. So here's 0. So another way is obviously you create a game mode, and then in the game mode set the VR pawn, and on your world settings set that game mode in there. Or for a quick one, you just set auto possess player to 0. We should have the motion controllers here with the hand mesh, both the left and right. Okay, so we'll have, did I not save that? All right, so I didn't set the mesh for the right hand. Yep, that looks a lot better. Say that. And now we have hands. All right, and then you can play. So feel free to use that in your own VR games and experience. So the plugin is under the MIT license and completely open source. All right, and that's how easy it is to create, either using it from basic, creating it from scratch, pawn with motion controllers, using the VR template, or just using a plugin. So here I'm showing my plugin, my VR plugin. And the pros and cons of the different approaches, let's just go back there, is obviously with the setting it up, you need to kind of do this. If you're doing a lot of VR projects, you kind of need to do a lot of the same things over and over again. For example, even a basic pawn, to do all of that basic setup can sometimes be a bit tedious, but it does give you quite a very granular control because you're setting everything up yourself. And it's not that difficult or not really that technically challenging, but you just have to remember all of the settings and then just go through them. Yeah, and with the VR template, it's all pre-made for you. You just need to change a couple of settings to kind of make it work for you. The con there is that it is, while it is well done, you need to go kind of read the blueprints, and they are not really for beginners. So some beginners may find it difficult to use or to understand the way it's all set up. Yes, it will take a little bit of time to kind of look at how Epic does the template or how it works, similar to how I showed you how the teleportation works, for example. The nice thing there is it kind of shows you how you could do a similar mechanic on your own using just blueprints. With a plugin, it's kind of like an in-between between a template where everything is set up for you and you kind of have to rejig it to fit your experience. And a VR project from scratch, you kind of set up the pawn and then add the, for example, teleportation code from scratch, which is not quite an easy feat to do. With a plugin, at least from with my plugin, you have the automation of something similar to a VR template, but you still have kind of like a granular option. So for example, for this experience, if I don't want to use teleportation, I don't have to create the code for it or reuse that code that comes with the template. I could simply not use teleportation. And if I want to add VR functionality, the template, the plugin comes with various functionality. So at the moment, we've got custom gravity, we've got gestures, we've got grabber, movement, scalable mesh, and we've got teleporter, and we should have also a VR gaze. So I can see that I've got a mistake there on the categories, but yeah, so we've got gaze, which is not available in the template. So the template only has the grabber and the teleporter. But as a comparison, for example, of the granularity of it, I'm just gonna add the teleporter on the left hand. All right. And to create the teleport for this, let me just remove that. So basically it's as easy as adding a component, and the nodes are, all of the implementation are hidden in the C++ side, which you can obviously change. But I've tried to make it as flexible as possible. So you can there are 3 different types of teleport, but we're just gonna use the one that's similar to the VR template, which is the arc. Right, and another one is hide, the teleport arc, and obviously to do a teleport. So you basically have this key nodes in here that you can use. So show teleport now. So that's the only level of complexity you need to deal with. And it's highly customizable. So I'll do an input. With a motion controller, let's use a trigger for this example. So I'm gonna use a motion controller left trigger, if I find it. Probably was there and I didn't see it. Yep, motion controller left trigger. So if it's pressed, so that's the input, similar to the VR template. But what they've done there, as you could, you might have probably noticed. Let me just open up that template version. With the, I believe it's on the pawn, the input is on the pawn here. So they're using that one. And the way that's set up is here. So settings and project settings. And you should have input. And so they've got the action settings here and what it actually does. So either of these would work. And they're doing this because of the Vive and the differences on the motion controller mappings for the Vive and the Rift. But for us, for the trigger, they're both triggers in the motion controller, in the Rift and the Vive. So we can just use motion controller left trigger. And when it releases, you could teleport and then kind of just check if you've actually been teleported. If you've been teleported, then you can do some custom stuff here that you want. So it's kind of nice and easy to see, and just to see how the logic goes. without a lot of extra code that you need to kind of waddle through and do. And it does this camera fade as well, like with the fade out and fade in options. So you just split that and you have a couple of fade out and fade in options, and you could recombine that as well. We'll go through a more comprehensive look on the teleport component on an own episode for the teleport, where we'll recreate this teleport component in Blueprint, and then we'll convert that to C++ from scratch. All right. So if we weren't able to teleport, we'd just kind of like to hide the teleport arc, and you can then easily customize the meshes for this. So the beam mesh, I've also provided it on my plugin. So SM beam, and teleport target mesh. Let's just use a cone as an example, and that should be it. So let's give this a try. Right, so now you could see the arc, and obviously it's just using the world grid material at the moment. Okay. I'm not seeing a target there, simply because that means forgot something. If you remember when we were looking at the motion controller, the VR template map, the way they're doing the setup for the valid locations for a teleport is using a nav mesh, and that's similar to the plugin. So we'll just add a nav mesh to the map. Nav mesh bounds volume. It's gonna make that a little bit bigger. Go. And then, yeah, this as well, maybe. No. 15. I think that's good enough for now. So we'll have, so all that green level there would be the valid teleport locations. And then the plugin should just, all right. So now you have a teleport marker showing you where you can teleport, and you can teleport from there. So I've noticed that I've kind of jumped up, and the teleporter has a lot of various options here where you could use and play around with. And one of them is the height offset, which is not technically really necessary, but I just kind of like to expose this in case you need it for various options. So like right now, the height offset is wrong. This goes with changes on the way the engine works sometimes, and sometimes with the SDK. So I kind of like that flexibility and kind of exposing it in blueprints. So for quick things like this, and I'm just gonna take note of that, that has changed, and need to set the defaults accordingly. So then the height offsets now look good. All right. So yeah, so kind of make it slightly more interesting. I have I'm gonna publish this one as well on a future version of the plugin. Just kind of give it away as well. So let's see. Let me, if I remember where I've placed it. Some content. This is gonna add some new, kind of some more fancier content for the teleport. Now let's just open that up again. to the map that we've had. Right, so one of the nice things with being able to granularly control it like this, I can set the, so now you can see that I've got two beams. One beam comes from the core, which is part of the game, which is the one I just added in to the project. We're going to use that, and we're just going to use target. So just because I know this mesh, I'm going to change the scale. So what that looks like is this. Apparently not. Okay, so I guess I didn't include the material in there. So I'm missing a material, which is a shame. Can't show you that. The moment. All right, so let's just go to, let's add the particle effects, which I'm hoping I've got all of it in here. Yeah. All right, so I need to look into those. Oh, there it is. So you can do customizations like this. If I want to go to the target. Yeah, I guess I'm missing a couple of textures from my end on this. All right, so it's not ready for prime time, but basically the idea is that you can, should you wish to, be able to create a lot more fancier stuff and combine particle effects with meshes and do a little bit more fine-tuned control, all from the convenience of this custom here. It's just a shame I can't show you at the moment the something more fancier than this, the beam mesh and the simple materials that comes with the plugin itself. But have a play around it, and yeah. And on the future live stream for the teleport, I'm just going to show you something with more fancy effects on it. All right, so we pretty much covered what we need to create a VR project from scratch. So creating it from the ground up, using the VR template and using a plugin, and looking at the teleport and how you could use that using a plugin and using a template, so the differences in there. And I guess we can go through the Q&A, but I can see there's no questions on the Twitch channel for now for this first episode, so I'm hoping there'll be more, or if you're watching this from a recording, feel free to post it. Yeah, so and that's pretty much it for this episode. And if you have any questions at all, just let me know. For the next episode, let me know from the comments, either in YouTube or on, yeah, in YouTube basically. Let me know whether you want to do me to do the teleport first or a flight mechanic. Yep, so simply flying around or moving around in 3D or VR space, or doing a teleport. So the flow that we're going to be following from here on end, we're going to create the mechanic from blueprint, from scratch. And then, so you'll know how to do it. And then we're going to use that or use the mechanic provided in the VR template if it's available. So for this locomotion options, the template only has teleport. So I'm going to be showing how to reuse the teleport mechanic that Epic has done on the VR template, if you wish. And I'm going to show you the plugin approach as well, which is what I kind of showed you a little bit today. And then we're going to convert the blueprint which we created from here onto a C++ to C++. So it goes from kind of like the easiest way, not really the easiest way, but from the most basic way up to the most difficult way, so to the C++. The C++ in Real is really it's really not that difficult compared to pure C++, but because of the macros and a lot of the convenience functions that Epic has exposed from the engine. But we're gonna cover it here, so to kind of like show that it's nothing to be afraid of, especially if you're just doing a migration from Blueprint to C++. So at least you get a feel for both. So with the nativization with the recent versions of the engine, you may need less C++, I guess, but sometimes it's a lot. Things are a lot easier to read and see, and obviously it's definitely a lot faster still with the pure C++, and from my opinion a lot more maintainable. And but basically I'm just going to try to show you how you could basically create a merging between C++ and Blueprint and expose things similar to what I'm doing with my plugin, which is hiding away a lot of the implementation, core implementation on the C++ end, and just exposing stuff on the Blueprint side for level designers or for artists to have a play, and they can just easily tweak things in Blueprints while not having to deal or be inundated with a lot of code that comes with Blueprints. So things like this, so artists or your level designers don't really need to see a lot of those implementations or having to work through them to try to figure them out, to simply change key stuff like these things. And yeah, so kind of make it a lot easier for them. So using variables and functions, although this one is also exposed through variables here. Yeah, so it just kind of makes it a lot easier to read as well. All right, so, and that's gonna be for the next episode on Sunday, next Sunday. So have a pick, teleport or flight. I'm gonna look at the votes on Saturday next week and prepare from there. So whichever one you folks have chosen, whether it's teleport or flight, and then I'm gonna do that on the next live stream and go through this flow. So that might be a tad bit longer than this episode, but yeah, but we'll have a lot more info for sure. So this is just a taste of the VR series, and of course we have to start from the beginning, which is to create something from scratch, and to kind of show off how easy it is to create a simple VR project using the Unreal Engine. All right, thanks folks for listening in, and I'll see you folks on the next time. Cheers, bye.